Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got two replays for you in the American Tier 9 Premium Heavy Tank, the Cobra T54. Now this is a very good Tier 9 Heavy Tank. It's basically the T54E2, or Sergeant Slaughter from Tier 8, and then they did the G.I. Joe collaboration, made it look plasticky, which, to be honest, I really like the look of the plastickiness. It does look like a plastic toy, which is one of those things that they've pulled off on that skin very, very well. Just like they did with the TS5 skin as well. And yeah, they basically moved it up to Tier 9, changed the statistics so it was technically a new tank. Note the inverted commas technically here. And gave it some new stats. And to be honest, they made it pretty crazy. Because what they did was they obviously buffed up the reload. They gave it an extra shell on this autoloader. It's still 360 alpha. It goes at 45 kilometers an hour, which is the same as the T54E2, but then they also gave it a turbo mode, which helps you go just that little bit quicker. You go up to about, what, 55, I think it is, or something like that, with the turbo mode, and you can go really rapid. It really helps you to get to those aggressive positions early on to dish out the damage. They also buffed up the penetration on the gun a little bit, so it went from like 220 odd to 240 on the standard AP round, and 275 on the premium APCR. Now, 240 is obviously not the highest still for a Tier 9, but it's still pretty damn useful, and you can still pen most tanks you're going to face outside of those super heavily armoured tanks that Tier 10, you know, like Mouse or Type 5, etc. And 275 pen is going to be enough to face most things, again, except for probably a Type 5. And the amount of damage you can dish out with this tank in rapid succession is beautiful, because the gun handling's great as well. And let's say you use the mobility to get to aggressive positions, you can dish out the damage really, really quickly, because the intro clip is very fast on this tank. It's only a 2-second intro clip, which means that you dish out the damage in, well, all 4 shells in 6 seconds from firing the first shot. I say your gun's fairly accurate. The aim time doesn't feel too bad. I mean, with the setup I've got, it's down at 2.5 seconds, but it really doesn't feel like that. And yeah, the shell velocity on the AP is 1,120. It's 1,380 on the APCR, which is fabulous velocity. And you've just seen it there on that Iron Arnie. Just how fast this tank auto-loads all over a tank and just destroys the hit points, gives you so much damage. It's a very, very beautiful tank to play, because even without the turbo mode, you can get up to that 45 kilometers an hour quite nicely if you run something like the powertrain, just give you that extra oomph in the engine. And then, you know, when you know that you aren't really going to need to fire your gun yet and you want to get to another position somewhere else across the map where you're chasing damage, you can just switch on the turbo and then speed along at 50 odd to 60 kilometers an hour really easily and skip across the map beautifully. Really is what this tank does. It doesn't really have the best armor in the universe. It has the kind of armor that you don't really want to rely on it. You don't want to sit there going, I'm a heavy tank, I'm going to bounce all the shots. But the thing is, you've got angles, you do have a decent thickness in the armor, so you can actually bounce shots, but just never rely on it. Never think, I am heavy tank, I will bounce, because you won't, for the most part. They'll go through your turret front and through your upper plate if they're firing premium, stuff like that. Especially with a lot of the Tier 10s you face, they will shred your armor. So you just got to be very, very careful of that. You just got to use your mobility to be a typical autoloader, really. Get flanking, get spanking, get smashing the shots into the enemy tanks, and you'll have a very good time with this tank. And I'd say it's one of my favourite Tier 9s. It's an absolutely solid tank. It took over from the T54E1 for me, in terms of that autoloader playstyle, just because it's got a little bit extra mobility. The gun handling is definitely nicer than the T54E1, and even though you do slightly less damage in terms of, you know, instead of 400 alpha, it's 360, as an all-round package, I definitely prefer this tank. One of the big downsides of this tank is, if the G.I. Joe collaboration ever comes back, is that it's super duper expensive. It was something stupid like 14, 15, 16, or I think it was even 17k gold. Yeah, 17.5k gold having a look, which is just stupidly expensive, and you should never pay that much money for a tank ever, because that's just silly money. But yeah, that was one of the other downsides, realistically. So what do I run in terms of a crew on the Cobra T54? Well, I run Born Leader, Rapid Reload, Sixth Sense, Situational Awareness, Track Mechanics, Steady Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Off-Road Driving. Off-Road Driving to negate the ground resistances on the tank so that, you know, it's not suffering too badly from the ground resistances to be able to hit its top speed, because it doesn't have the best soft terrain resistance in the world. So I want to try and knock that down to help it with that top speed and help it, especially when it's in the turbo mode, to be able to get to that rapid speed itself. The 3 gun handling perks, because it is a heavy tank, I do want to make sure that the gun is going to be as good as possible, especially when I'm taking it to those really aggressive flanking positions. I want to make sure I'm getting the most out of the clip potential and getting all of those shots to hit. And then the rest of the perks generally, because that's what I'd run on pretty much everything, especially if you're running trap mechanic, because of being a heavy tank, you get tracked quite often, and if you've already burnt your repair kit, you want to be able to get your tracks back on quicker so that you can keep wiggling and keep angling your armor in that way. And in terms of equipment, I run the optics, the gun stabilizer, and the powertrain. Powertrain to be able to just get that extra oomph in the engine. It gives you an extra wee bit of horsepower, which makes your horsepower per ton ratio better, which again helps you get up to those top speeds that you will have in both the turbo and in the standard mode. And then the gun stabilizer, because you want to make the gun as good as possible. And optics, again, to just get that view range up, because there's so many maps where you will need to be able to spot for yourself, and if you get it up to 512 meters of view range, that's absolutely fantastic, and you will get a ton of assistance if you play, again, if you play it aggressively and get it into those aggressive spotting locations. Because obviously, you can put it in the aggressive spotting locations where there's ridge lines, like Prokhorovka, for example. You can use the fantastic 10 degrees of gun depression that this tank has, and then you can spot out and just get a ton of assistance in that regard. But yeah, I generally enjoy this tank, just because of the way it plays. You know, you can play aggressively in it, you can dish out damage really quickly, and then, you know, it's just got that flexibility. It's definitely a beautiful tank. And in this game, so far, we've had a pretty damn nice game. We're up 5.6k damage and 2.8k assistance. You saw us spot the waffle and the gorilla there, which has fed us a bit of assistance, I think, on the waffle. We are now charging towards this gorilla, and again, I could activate the turbo mode, and if you want to know how to activate the turbo mode, by the way, it is left on the D-pad. Left on the D-pad. So you press left on the D-pad, you will activate turbo mode. But it is exactly the same as the CS63. That if you activate that, your gun handling becomes absolutely tragic, and the bloom becomes absolutely massive, which means you very rarely hit anything. So bear that in mind. Which is why I say that the turbo is one of those that you have to really think about if you're going to use it, because if you think you're going to have the ability to fire in the next 10 seconds, you may as well not use it and just use your normal mobility. And finish that game with 6.2k damage, 2.8k assist, the ace tank at the high caliber, the sniper, the 1938 base XP, a really great game there for the Cobra T54. Again, like I say, a solid tank. But yeah, the turbo is one of those that you really have to know when and when not to use it, because you do have that 2-second cooldown, as you're seeing here. And within that 2-second cooldown, if pressing left on the D-pad, I can't fire the gun, I can't move, it stops you dead, you basically can't do anything whatsoever. So you have to assess when and where is best. If the damage is on the opposite side of the map, that's the best time to use it, because obviously you can activate it, get there really quickly, and just before you get there to dish out the damage, press left on the D-pad, get out the turbo mode, and use the gun, because then obviously the bloom isn't that big. Because you're seeing it at the minute, we are using the turbo mode, and we're going at, like, yeah, okay, it's well over 60 kilometers an hour with this turbo mode. I'm looking at that, it's 62, 63 kilometers an hour. That is what we are hitting. And that's why it's so nice to have, because we can get to the position we need to be at nice and early, nice and aggressively, and then we can spot out and start seeing where we can get the damage out. And it is very, very useful. And you've just seen us use it there. As soon as we got to the position we want to be at, where we can try and use the 10 degrees of gun depression, spot out and dish out damage, instantly switch back to the normal mode so that we can get the best gun handling we can get, and then we're ready to go. So yeah, we're on the second game, and in this second replay, we are on Nomini Nom. And from the spawn that we got on Nomini Nom, this is one of the best places you can go, because you can spot out the enemy team as they camp on this little E-line ridge, and then you can dish out the damage with this autoloader, which is really, really good. As you can see, we're starting to spot them up as they are coming up on top of the ridge, which is feeding us assistance, and we can also get damage. And by doing this on the ridge line, obviously we can then stay we can get, if we get spotted ourselves, we can pull back behind the ridgeline, get safe, wait for the reload, and then pull back. But as you can see at the minute, even though I'm reloading, I'm currently just poking out, because that way I can try and keep spotting the enemy team. I can try and get some assistance. We end up spotting the 705 there as we poked over, which I was kind of hoping that maybe if we did spot him that we'd get some assistance, but unfortunately I think he just pulled back behind the ridge line there, which kept him safe. We're now going to move up closer to this rock so that once again we could basically try and spot anything that's on our right hand side. And there we go, the T30 ends up putting a shot into us. Thankfully that T30 doesn't have the big gun, because that really would have hurt if he had the big gun. But we wanted to stay close to that rock and get up to this rock because we could spot anything that may have been staying unspotted. And then again, we're pushing the tempo. We're being able to keep ourselves in the game, keep using the gun, not just stagnating in one position. So we're just trying to get a shot at the T54E2, our tier 8 counterpart, but we couldn't quite find it. The 705 ends up driving out. It's like, oh, hello, sir. Get a shot straight into his driver, which pins in place, which means we can easily pen the last 3 shots in the clip, and we can also have him tracked in a really precarious position for him, because he's actually really in the open. We do have a fair few people over here, so that if we do end up spotting anything or tracking anything, there's a possibility that we'll get some nice assistance from it. So as we're poking up on this ridge, we end up spotting the artillery, and as you can see, these games were from a wee while ago, and that artillery only has 400 hit points. Yeah, they still hit hard in this replay, but we've got rid of it. The M103 gets a shot into us, unfortunately. We try and get a shot into his side there and try and track and pen him, but we don't have quite enough pen to actually do that. But we do track him in place. Not that it's going to be very helpful, because he is actually just behind cover, which means that my team can't actually shoot him. We're just now waiting for the reload, and this is where the Cobra T54 is great, because we've just fired the clip. We're not really out of the game for that long, really. I mean, what was that? That was 25 seconds. We were out of the game for 25 seconds, and then we get going, and we can just dump our clip really, really quickly and get a bucket load of damage. We're up to 4.2k damage, to 2.3k assist. The team is currently 12-9 up, so we're currently winning this game, which is glorious. And once again, we're just typical autoloader gameplay. We've dumped the clip, we're just waiting for our next reload, and then when we're getting within range of reloading, we're now using a chance here to move up and get into a position to be able to use it. We're not just sitting in one position waiting for the reload, because then when we are reloaded, we're going to have to move ourselves up into a position and waste time trying to get into a position to be able to use the gun. When you get within that like 10-second range of reloading, we may as well just decide, okay, you know what, now I'm 10 seconds within reloading, I can probably get a little bit forward and stay in safety, and then I'm ready to shoot the gun when it's fully reloaded. And there was a pretty unsuccessful clip, really, because we missed one shot on the M103, but we did get 2 shots into the T54, but 2 out of 4 isn't the best. And as soon as that T54 got below the ridgeline, there was no point holding on to that 4th and final shell. We may as well just go for the full reload, and then we're ready to dish out this clip once again. It is going to leave us with an uneven number of ammunition, though, which means that if we do fire this full clip properly, we're only going to have 1 shot left, basically, if we do a full reload. And we've managed to kill the T54, and unfortunately, we hit the floor on that 50 TP. But we do get a shot into the Barask, which is fine. And now we're reloading. We have realised, oh, we've only got 1 shell of AP left. We've got to load the premium because we're running out of ammo. We're up to 6k damage with that 2.3k assist so far. So, I mean, what? We're at 8k combined, which is pretty good. Just waiting on the reload. I've decided that I'm going to use the turbo mode here. And the reason I've loaded turbo is because I wanted to use it to get the best speed. But then we switched back out of the turbo because I thought, oh, maybe I'm going to get a shot at that Barask as he's running away. But unfortunately, we didn't quite find that shot. What I was going to use the turbo for was basically to get to this ridgeline here next to the T30 as quickly as possible, and therefore avoid taking a shot. Now, I know I'm not a one-shot at this point for the T30 because he has got the small gun. We know that from earlier. He ends up hitting us for 400, but we managed to shut him down. Now, there's only 2 tanks left on the enemy team, and it was like, oh, that's an AFK tank. I was fearing that. The reason I hesitated on the T30 in the first place was I was fearing that Inferno. But we get a shot into his drive wheel because you may as well fully aim the shot. Just watching the medium tank behind us, but the Barask does get shut down there. And there's just this Inferno left on the enemy team. I'm thinking, am I going to get another shot at this Inferno? Probably not, right? There's 2, 3 tanks already here. And in fact, though, 3 seconds, 2, 1... Did we get a shot? Yes, we do. We get the actual kill on that AFK Inferno there. And finish the game with a really nice total for the Cobra T54. Finish with the victory, the 4 kills, 7.5k damage, nearly 3k assists. I think that's 10k combined. The ace tanker, the sniper, the confederate, the high caliber, 2.3, nearly 2.4k base XP. A really great game for the Cobra T54, which is honestly an absolutely solid tier 9 heavy tank. Very, very good. One of the best autoloaders at tier 9. And is just really good fun to play. The downside is that 17.5k gold is far too much money. So as always, everybody, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
A great success!